Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of Colliding Worldviews, found only here on ABN's Trinity channel. If you do not have it on any of your smartphones or other devices, I would recommend that you go to the Trinity channel's website, trinitychannel.com, and you will find a number of different ways that you can watch these shows every single week, because there are a number of apps that can be downloaded regardless of the device that you are using. If you are using an Apple iPhone, an iPad, a Android phone, Apple TV, Amazon Fire Stick TV, Roku, the list goes on. And there's apps for this. Usually it's ABN Sats, that's the app, but there's also one platform where we have ABN Sat and also we have a Trinity channel app, but it's usually just ABN Sat. So regardless of the device that you are using, if you are not tuning in to trinitychannel.com online, or if you're not watching this through satellite, which we thank the Lord for, that those satellites are still flowing, we are available on a lot of devices. So if you are at work, or if you're wherever you are, if you have a smartphone, you can download the app. And with that, you get ABN's new digital tree, which has about 50 different channels on there now. And one of them is the Trinity channel. And whenever we are broadcasting a live show like this one, Colliding Worldviews, every single Monday, you can watch that live streaming on the app, which is very high quality. So please, again, regardless of your device, go to your app page, your app store, whatever, look for ABN or ABN Sat. You can download it for free. And you can watch these shows on any device pretty much. It is no longer just old school satellite, or again through trinitychannel.com. We thank you for your continued prayers and support, and that allows these satellite signals to continue. If you are not aware, these shows are going through satellite to North America, that's United States and Canada, North Africa, Middle East, and to Australia and New Zealand. So a lot of people see this through satellite, but again, all of these other devices as well as high-speed internet. Now, Colliding Worldviews is just one of the weekly shows that we do, and this is similar to a marathon show in that it's a longer show. It's a 1-hour show, and it's a variety of topics, although usually it's on the topic of Islam. And we have a different guest every week, a little bit different than the marathon shows where we have 2, 3, or more guests per show. This is just one guest, and they are able to talk with me for the entire hour, and I ask them questions, they give information, and that gets the information out to you. Again, people throughout the world can get this information through this show, and also you can find these shows on ABN's Trinity channel's YouTube channel as well. You can find these videos there, as well as my Vimeo channel, vimeo.com/Tony Gurley. Now, when we do these different shows, regardless of what topic it's on, again, usually about 70% on Islam, I have experts in different fields. But sometimes I don't have someone who necessarily has a PhD. I have someone who is more boots on the ground. They're actually out there. They can see what's going on in whatever part of the world that they happen to be in, and they can give us their take on what is happening where they're located, what's happening around them. And of course, many people throughout the world have different sources of information, and it's always nice to be able to get those different sources of information and be able to share those with other people. So today, we are talking about the Syrian civil war, counter-terrorism, and Islamization. So 3 major topics that we're going to be talking about in this 1-hour show. My guest is Rami Dabbas. Rami Dabbas, also, he was born in the Soviet Union into a Jordanian-Russian family. In Jordan, he used to represent the International Eurasian Movement from 2011 until 2013, which was led by Alexander Dugin. And Rami was also the leader of the Eurasian Union Youth of Jordan Party, which was later banned by Jordanian authorities. Rami is also the founder of the anti-Islamic organization Russian Defense League, and he's the producer of Global Revolutionary Alliance in the Arab language. He also holds a degree in engineering, but we, like I said, are not talking about engineering today. We're talking about these other 3 major categories: the Syrian civil war, and also counterterrorism and Islamization. So Rami, welcome to Colliding Worldviews.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be a guest on your show. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's great to have you here. And Rami, I know that our viewers are really interested in what you have to share on all these different things that we're going to go into today. And again, you are, please just give our audience a little bit of background about you and where you are. Even if you have to, if you have to kind of give a general sense of where you are, that's fine. We understand. Just let our audience know a little bit about you.
Well, as you said, I born in Soviet Union. I live in Jordan, in Amman. I born to a Muslim father, Christian mother. I left Islam in 2010. I had been as an atheist. I converted to Christianity in 2012. I got baptized. I did the Russian Union of Jordan, banned by authorities. I had problems actually with authorities because of that. And I founded the Russian Defense League, cooperating with the English Defense League and the other defense leagues of Europe to stop the Islamization of Europe. Was one of my goals to not see Europe turning into another Middle East. I want to save the democracy of the free world. I want to save the freedom of the free world. I want to see, don't want to see West and Europe falling into Islam.
So just let our audience know again that you are a former Muslim, and right now there are a lot of viewers who have seen like the shows with Tommy Robinson. They've heard of the English Defense League and what is happening in the UK. If you friends, if you don't know about that, please look at our videos on the Islamization of the United Kingdom with Tommy Robinson, also Enemy of the State with Tommy Robinson. Both of those can be found on my Vimeo channel. So people, for the most part, have at least heard something about the Islamization of the United Kingdom. So again, what Rami had started over in his area is a version of that, similar, and with the same goals in mind as fighting this Islamization of that area, correct?
The thing is, Tommy Robinson left the Defense League a few years ago. I think he now works for the Rebel Media as a reporter, and I heard some rumors that he may form a political party. But now actually most of the defense leagues are hooligans, and the Britain First has to lead England in future and make them Senate members, parliament members in the parliament. And that's a problem. They don't have parliament members, those parties. Even the Conservatives won a few months ago with a difficulty, which was a very difficult way to win by the Conservatives against the Labour and the Left.
And Rami, I want to get into a number of different topics. I mean, we have these three main overall topics that we're going to be talking about, but I have a number of questions to ask you in relation to them, because I know that you have been keeping up to date on the news, and again, you are seeing what's happening around your area, so I'm sure you can give our viewers a little bit different perspective as well, and just your thoughts based on what you have seen living in Jordan and hearing all the news that's coming out of the West and coming out from other countries. Now, there's differing opinions on Bashar al-Assad and I guess just his character, and if it would be best if he was not a leader in that country or if he just continued to be a leader in that country. I know I've talked to a lot of Iraqis who have said that life was way better when Saddam Hussein was in power than it is now. Of course, ISIS is way worse than him. But there's people who are saying that same thing when it comes to Assad. Well, they'll say, well, if you take Assad out, then this is going to be, Iraq 2.0, where basically the group who is most aggressive and wants that position the most is going to come into power. That's one opinion that people have. That's one option and one possibility, obviously. But I wanted to ask you, what do you think would happen if Assad were removed from power, whether that was because of Western countries or, say, just countries in the East? I mean, just if he was not in power, what do you think would happen next?
Let me go in details. Actually, we need, before going to talk about if Assad will be removed from power, we need to secure the future of the region. If Assad goes, I have a feeling that Syria will fall into the hands of radical Islamists and the terrorists. So, but I think with Trump administration, they are heading around to remove Assad, so they remove in the next Hezbollah, and later to remove Iran. It's because, first of all, that's the new direction of the Trump administration to remove the Assad. It's not my opinion, but that's what I think that they will do. So they remove Hezbollah, the Islamic terrorist organization, and then address the threat of Iran, because they have an ambitions of expansion in Middle East. I'm not saying that, for example, Saudi Arabia or those countries are much better. Actually, both, I don't like them. But actually, I want to say that they will remove Assad. They will establish a Kurdish state in Iraq, in Syria. Then they will remove Hezbollah that occupied the Christian Lebanon. Lebanon was a Christian country and occupied by Assad. By Hezbollah with the help with Assad regime and Iranian regime also. Also, Syria has suffered. The people of Syria have suffered a lot from during the past 60 years under the Assad family, which many represent Assad as a secular leader. But if you go to the constitution of Syria, the constitution of Syria says and claims that only a Muslim can lead Syria. So by the constitution of Syria, Christians cannot be a president of Syria. So we have to remove Assad. That's what I'm saying. And we saw how Iraq was led by minority and how Iraq failed, because it was led by a minority. And as minority, as a Jordanian Christian, I see that Iraq and Iran were governed by minority, and Iraq fallen because it was governed by minorities, so Syria has to do. What I mean to say is justice and democracy. We need to democratize Syria, to put the secular leaders, democratic leaders, and to give order and law, and to stop the Iranian expansion in the region, because it's a threat not only to all the region, even to Israel, which is the only democratic country in Middle East. I see they are a threat, and we need to eliminate terrorist organizations like ISIS, like Al-Qaeda. As I said, that those who say that Assad is a secular leader have to understand the constitution of Syria, since it states only a Muslim can be a president of Syria. And here we go, what a secular leader and what a secular law. I say that also the American president has already made a decision. The U.S. Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, said the reign of Assad family is coming to end. That's what he said. I'm quoting from him. Eyewitnesses reported that a special U.S. Jordanian armored forces entered Syria to support the Syrian rebels in the Syrian deserts. Now the Syrian rebels known as the Syrian Democratic Forces, combined from Kurdish fighters and Syrian fighters, air fighters, those who fight against the Assad regime. But we have also to eliminate the ISIS, the radical Islamic groups, to seize their territories, but put them under the control of the American army. So establish a free zones, safe zones, so that the refugees go back to these free zones. Near more than 450,000 of Syrian refugees reported in the last 2 months back to Syria, to those safe areas. And that's a report by the United Nations. The military experts in Washington. Yes.
Yeah, those refugees that you're referring to, those are refugees who are staying in the Middle East and then are being brought back. You're talking about refugees who've, like, say, gone west overseas and then they're coming back. Which Please be clear for our audience which refugees you're talking about.
The Syrian refugees from Turkey, Lebanon, and Jordan are going back to those safe areas. But those safe areas were under the control of ISIS, the Islamic organization. And now those the safe zones, after liberation of these zones under the control of U.S. military, the USA will not give those militaries those areas to the Assad regime, to the Iranian militias, and they are establishing a free zones and safe zones, and those zones are very important to the endangered groups, to the minorities and other people.
Okay. Now, this is a question that I had for you a little bit later on, but since we're talking about it now, I want to go ahead and just jump to it, because we are seeing these refugees who aren't staying in the Middle East, but they're actually crossing the ocean, going into Europe, going, coming to the U.S. and so on in other countries. What are your thoughts about this refugee crisis? I mean, right a few minutes ago, you just mentioned that many refugees are staying in the general area of where ISIS is, but of course far enough away to where they can be away from them and not be hurt by them. Why do you think, or what do you think about all the refugees who aren't staying in the general area and are actually going far west, going to the U.S. and to Canada, and again to completely other countries far away from where their home was?
Well, if you want my opinion, I will quote the Russian President Vladimir Putin, and he said that Muslim refugees has to go to Saudi Arabia and to Iran. I'm saying this because they are not going to assimilate and integrate in the new societies and will not adapt the new culture. But the problem, those refugees that are going back to those safe zones, basically they are from Jordan, Lebanon, and Turkey. I don't support the refugee crisis in Europe and the West, because it's a part of the globalism and to destroy those societies and turn them into chaos. I will say maybe the Christian, atheists, other minorities, they can go, maybe they will not adapt to Saudi Arabia, of course, or to Iran. Maybe they can go to Europe. They're still not in large numbers like the Muslims. Muslims won't integrate, and we saw a lot of crimes, rape crimes, other crimes, terrorist attacks in Europe and West, and that's a problem. Many people warned about that Muslims will not adapt in those societies, but they ignored. They kept ignoring those facts. That's why I do have a website supporting the American President Donald J. Trump about his policies against refugees, and I do support like his policies and the policies of the Russian president. I like the both views on the refugee crisis.
And we're seeing that there's obviously multiple concerns here, because there's the concern that this is a modern day hijra, and that many Muslims are coming to the West in order to increase the numbers and, of course, for creeping Sharia with the ultimate goal of having those territories under Sharia. But even if that were not the case, we see, like you just mentioned, the crimes that are being committed by the refugees simply because they're going from one lifestyle in one country where women are completely covered up to countries where women are wearing, whatever they choose to wear. And these men don't know how to act when women are wearing perfume instead of a burqa. And so we have multiple problems that are happening. Even in the short term, we have, these rapes that are happening, all this sexual assault, and all these different countries where they're putting up at swimming pools these posters saying, hey, this is how you're supposed to act around Western women or whatever. So it's really creating, obviously, a headache for a lot of people. And I've mentioned before that, of course, America has been in the Middle East. We've set up green zones, a safe zone, quote unquote, for our own military. saying, hey, this area is good for sure. So yes, there's a lot of bad things happening around it, but this is a green zone, a safe zone. So what do you think about that being set up for all of these people who have been driven out of their homes and their areas, their cities, whatever, by ISIS? Don't you think it'd be more effective, and especially if there were not some overall agenda to all of this, don't you think it would be easier to set up a green zone in the Middle East while we fight ISIS, and then once ISIS is gone, then allowing those people to go back to their homes, back to their areas where they came from?
The thing is, I have a news that the Syrian president, he doesn't want the Syrian refugees back. That's firstly. Secondly, I'm wondering, okay, in Syria we have a war, in Iraq we have a war, but what about the North African refugees? Do they have a war, for example, to pretend they are refugees or they are Syrians? I call it a completely invasion. A complete invasion. They come to Europe or they come to West, calling for democracy, freedom, and when they increase in number, they will ask to implementation of Sharia law. For example, Lebanon was a Christian country in past, and the immigration from another Muslim Arabic countries was unchecked and with an open border policy, and now they are a Muslim country. And that's what will happen exactly to Europe if they will keep the same policies, taking those refugees and don't monitoring the immigration and with the open border policy. Some politicians may say that those refugees will add to the economy, but actually most of those refugees aren't educated well. They don't have degrees. Even if they have degrees, most of their degrees aren't recognized. I don't know what it's about. An invasion, a completely invasion. As you said, it's a hijrah. It's a hijrah from a country to another to make it into a Muslim later. And that's what the Muslims say. That's what the Muslims say. We want to Islamize the world, and it's completely in their ideology, Quran.
And also, too, Rami, a lot of people are not aware that the Islamic theology is that Islam was the original religion of the world, and that this whole world belongs to Allah, and when they go into a new territory to take it for the Muslims and to bring it under Sharia, they're basically just, bringing more parts of this world, of course, under Islamic law. And also, too, in the past, whenever Muslims have gone to a certain area, like, say, North Africa or parts of Europe, or even been in Israel or whatever, the Islamic belief is that if they overtake an area any time in history, then if they lose that area, well, that area is still technically theirs. They just need to fight to get it back, correct?
Yes. Well, let me tell you also another information. I think you may know it. The whole Middle East was a Jewish and a Christian. The Islam belongs to Arabic Peninsula, and the Islam came with an invasion to Middle East and take over Middle East and take over all terrorist countries. Turkey was a Byzantine empire, was a Christian, and now they are a Muslims called Turkey. I think basically Islam will come to invade other countries. It's basically in their written in Quran, and basically we can go to the history of the Islam, how Islam spread, and it's spread by sword. Firstly, they say we are peaceful, and once they are become a majority, they start establishing a Sharia law, persecuting minorities, persecuting Christians, persecuting the Jewish. Also, the racism in Quran against the Jewish, it's more than the Mein Kampf, the book of Nazis.
The Mein Kampf, Hitler's Mein Kampf.
Mein Kampf, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. As you probably saw that picture that I put on Facebook the other day when I was giving people that video update about that imam in Davis, California. who was
Yes.
just quoting Sahih al-Bukhari, and all of a sudden a bunch of people around the world hear about it, they get mad about it, all of a sudden CARE gets involved and says, they talk him into caring and giving this public apology. And that doesn't change the fact that what he was quoting is still in the primary sources. And in that picture that I showed, which is actually from Bill Warner's book on Sharia, there's more anti-Jew hatred or anti-Semitism in Islam's primary sources, the Quran, the Hadith, and the Sirah literature, than Hitler's Mein Kampf. And many people know Hitler and all the Jews he killed or had killed because of the hatred that he had for Jews. But this anti-Semitism goes right back to Muhammad himself. I mean, he was the ultimate anti-Semite, and the hatred that Muslims have for Jews today is just a continuation of the hatred that Muhammad had for Jews after they rejected him and said that he was not an actual prophet, right?
The thing is, we need to be aware also of the Islamic taqiyya. Many Muslims claim that they only believe in Quran, for example, and they don't believe in the Hadiths, the books of Muhammad. And actually, the same Quran has a lot of violent verses, hate verses. I don't want to recite them. I think they are already known. But also, I think they believe in the Hadiths, but they claim we only believe in the Quran. And we need to be aware of the taqiyya, how the Muslims are allowed to lie in Islam to defend their Islam. And that's a problem too.
The taqiyya, the tariya, the maruna, all these different terms that they use, allowing them to lie or to sugarcoat or to omit certain details about certain sources, whatever. And that's why I tell people all the time, look, yes, you want to talk and love your Muslim neighbor, coworker, friend, classmate, etc., but don't let them define Islam for you, because they technically don't. Muhammad defined Islam 1,400 years ago, and if we want to know what Islam actually teaches, we just need to read those primary sources for ourselves. And we, of course, don't want to encourage our Muslim neighbor to live more like Muhammad. It's a good thing that many Muslims don't live like Muhammad, but we want to meet them where they're at and point them to the truth, point them to the gospel. But at the same time, don't be naive and allow them to teach you Islam, quote unquote, and saying, oh yeah, well, this is true Islam because they live peacefully. But that's the thing, is that when people say that Islam's a religion of peace, that isn't the means, that is the goal. The goal is to have the world under Sharia, to have the whole world under Dar al-Islam, and jihad is the means, but peace, quote unquote, is the goal. Because when there's no more jahiliyyah, there's no more Dar al-Harb anywhere in the entire world in opposition to Dar al-Islam, well, then there's peace, quote unquote, because there's no other new territories to move into and to try to bring under Sharia and all that kind of stuff. And the reason, Rami, too, why I brought up the whole thing about Israel, this goes right back to the Israeli-Palestinian, fighting and stuff that's going on. It was all about having a place of their own. Well, Saudi Arabia could say, here's a huge chunk of land. Come here, we're going to give this to you. Quit worrying about Israel and just come here, because you're going to have all this land to do whatever you want with it and all of that. But that is not happening, because Israel, it's more about that territory, that Muslims used to be in that territory. So they think of it as, okay, well, this is still our territory, and you Jews who we hate need to get out because this is ours. So it's about that specific land and not just their own place to call home, correct?
The fact is, Palestinians never had a territory. They were under Ottoman occupation, and after that, after British Mandate, and they never had an occupation. Palestinians are Jordanians, and the Egyptian President El-Sisi offered them the Sinai Desert. As I say, also Jordan will take a part of them, and we can solve the whole conflict. And
speaking of Sinai and getting over towards the Egypt area, I want to ask you about that because we know that is where the Muslim Brotherhood was founded back in 1928 by Hassan al-Banna. And the Muslim Brotherhood, of course, is part of this. The Muslim Brotherhood has many front groups in America and other Western countries. And of course, it doesn't say, Muslim Brotherhood on the outside of their building. They have many, many other names that they use. But these all fall under this umbrella of the Muslim Brotherhood. And again, they're being willing to modernize, but not westernize. They have the same goal as the jihadists. It's just that they have a different method of operation, and they are way more patient than ISIS, who's just wanting a caliphate yesterday and is out there fighting in order to get it. So what do you think about declaring the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization, which is something that many people were hoping that Donald Trump would do?
Actually, it's a terrorist organization. Each Islamist, each terrorist from Al-Qaeda, from ISIS, from Al-Nusra, from Boko Haram was at some part of his life or her life a Muslim Brotherhood member. All of them were Muslim Brotherhood members. Then they turned it into those organizations. So first they were educated by the Muslim Brotherhood. Then they came to another terrorist organization. I think Donald J. Trump addressed it that Qatar is the main sponsor of terrorism, the main sponsor of jihadism, and they are the main sponsor of Muslim Brotherhood terrorist organization. Also, a second country that supports Muslim Brotherhood, Turkey. They created an Arabic coalition from Saudi Arabia, from Emirates, from other Arab countries to fight the expansion of Iran, and at the same time to fight the Islamic Brotherhood. Basically, the Muslim Brotherhood now located in Qatar and relocated later to Lebanon, to Hezbollah. And now they are affiliating with Iran.
Okay.
Hamas
and
also.
I know that, like I said, it was in the news that that President Trump may designate them a terrorist organization, and there were a lot of people that were hoping that would actually happen. But then it kind of stopped being talked about in the news, and when you did look it up, trying to figure out, okay, well, what happened with this thing, it turns out, from what I was reading, that somebody, in Trump's, cabinet or somewhere, obviously around the groups who he does talk with for intelligence and all that stuff, somebody told him, well, the Muslim Brotherhood has these different branches, quote unquote kind of thing, and not all of them are terrorists, quote unquote. And because of that, it would not be wise to designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a whole as a terrorist group. And I guess this seemed to carry enough weight to where he said, okay, well, I'm not going to designate it a terrorist group. But what do you know about the history of the Muslim Brotherhood that would even give that
Obama,
Yeah, I was asking, what do you know about the Muslim Brotherhood and their history that would give that any hold any water with that statement at all, that there's actually peaceful branches of it, and therefore you don't want to designate it as a whole as a terrorist organization?
For example, I live here in Jordan, and the authorities claim that the Muslim Brotherhood in Jordan is a peaceful one. But actually, a few years ago, they make it a lot of disturb in Jordan, attacked police, attacked civilians, and they are considered in Jordan as a peaceful organization. And they were attacking. Also, they were trying to establish Sharia law by preventing, for example, the discos, nightclubs, attacking Christians, also attacking minorities, attacking apostates, and that's what the Muslim Brotherhood is about: establishing a Sharia law, whether in a peaceful way or whether in a violent way. When they claim they are peaceful, it's a completely taqiyya. It's a completely taqiyya. For example, Barack Hussein Obama was a Muslim Brotherhood. I consider that man as a Muslim Brotherhood, was a man who helped ISIS to create. with the liberals of the Democratic Party, and all of them affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood and sponsored by Qatar and the Muslim countries, and they were spreading Islam into America and other countries. So they will do it in a peaceful way by taqiyya, and in a peaceful way, or in a violent way by ISIS, by Al-Qaeda, all of them. Even Osama bin Laden was at a part of his life was a Muslim Brotherhood member.
Even Ayman al-Zawahiri, who was, teamed up obviously with Osama bin Laden to create Al-Qaeda, he used to be part of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yes.
And people need to know that, yes, they are not ISIS to where they're out there, fighting people every single day, shooting guns, trying to bring the world or wherever they happen to be under the caliphate. They aren't that aggressive, but it's exactly that makes them so dangerous, because people see the nightly news and they see Al-Qaeda, they see ISIS, Boko Haram, and these different jihadi groups. It's because their daily actions, their method of operation, is what causes them to wind up on the nightly news. And you don't see this with the Muslim Brotherhood because they seem peaceful, quote unquote, compared to ISIS, because they aren't actually out there fighting. But the goal is the same. ISIS wants the world under Sharia. The Muslim Brotherhood wants the world under Sharia.
Yes.
It's just that they have different ways of going about it. And if ISIS is like, hey, even working with the West is a shirk, or that makes you an apostate. I mean, that lets us know why ISIS is out there, basically killing anyone who doesn't agree with them. It's because if you don't have, their strict views and all these different things, well, then even though you may call yourself a Muslim, well, you're technically a hypocrite. You're technically an apostate. So it's, number one, inaccurate for someone to say, well, ISIS is not Islamic because they're killing Muslims, because Sunnis and Shias have been killing each other for 1,400 years for the same reason. Oh, you're not Muslim. Oh, no, you're not Muslim. So that one doesn't even, hold any weight at all. But that's again, what people need to realize about the Muslim Brotherhood is that they have a different way of going about it, and is very inconspicuous, and they're very patient. And they say, hey, if this is going to take 100 years to do this, we're fine with that. We'll take the 100 years, and we'll make it happen in the 100-year time. But there are many naive people in the West, here in the U.S. and other countries, who don't do their research. They don't know about the Muslim Brotherhood. They don't read their founding documents. And they think, well, this is true Islam. These are the nice guys, so I'm willing to work with them. When really, the Muslim Brotherhood is willing to work with any group who is willing to work with them. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican, if you're a Democrat, or what you are. If you're going to give them area to work, they're going to take that area and they're going to work it. And they're going to work it to bring about Sharia in their timing. And again, modernize, but not westernize. Now, what do you think, Rami, of...
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Yes. I wanted to say that Linda Sarsour, for example, want to spread a Sharia law, and which is a Hamas supporter, which is a terrorist organization. She is a part of Muslim Brotherhood. Hamas is a Muslim Brotherhood. Hamas, which is a Muslim Brotherhood, uses children and their civilians as a human shield against Israel. They are criminals even to their own people. They don't care except about terror, spreading Sharia law, and terrorism. That's what they're all about. Even Hamas is a terrorist, as a Muslim Brotherhood movement.
And this is something, Rami, that people in the West need to understand, because, and this is this is a reason why people can understand what we're talking about here. If ISIS or any jihadist group all of a sudden popped up in America and started, killing people, what would happen? Well, people would call 911. The police would come. They'd take them out. They'd either be dead or they'd end up in jail, in prison, or whatever, right? It'd be this militant group that just popped up. So the Muslim Brotherhood probably thinks a lot more than ISIS does. And they're thinking, well, we can't do that. We have to do it slowly and inconspicuously so that people don't realize what we're doing. And when
Yes.
certain states in the United States, or as you know, Canada now, they start saying, well, we don't want to offend Muslims. We don't want to make anyone mad. We don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. So let's go ahead and put these laws in place or pass these resolutions that, against Islamophobia, quote unquote, or it's you can't offend people. You can't say things that people don't like. Well, regardless of your intentions and how much you are caring for people and their emotions, whether you know it or not, all you're doing as a country or as a state or whatever is implementing aspects of Sharia upon yourself, because those are the same rules that would be in place if you were under Sharia. Because under Sharia, it is punishable to criticize Islam, which isn't even a person. It's a religio-political system. It's punishable to criticize Muhammad, who is dead, who can't get offended, right? And all these Western countries are doing, again, Western states or wherever it happens to be, they're implementing aspects of Sharia upon themselves and just making it that much easier for the different groups who fall under the Muslim Brotherhood in the West to implement their overall goal and agenda. What are your thoughts on that, Rami?
Well, also let me before that, I have a news. For example, an Arab country, which is a Qatar, sent more than $50 million and ammunition to terrorists who participated in bombing churches in Egypt in Palm Sunday through Libyan-Egyptian borders. As many leaders of those terrorist groups reside in Qatar, and they were sponsored by Qatar and Turkey, and main supporter to, as we said, to Muslim Brotherhood is a Qatar with Turkey. And I think it's a big mistake to not consider them as a terrorist organization. The thing is, it's the founder, as we said, of all Islamic radical organization. It's a political ideology, like, for example, Islam. The same Islam is an ideology, and the Muslim Brotherhood politicizing Islam in the core of radical Islam by the Brotherhood, whether by a peaceful way or whether by a violent way. Peaceful way by taqiyya and violent way as they are. So we need to make them as a terrorist organization. And the thing is, most of anti-Trump media in the United States of America are supported by those countries, by Qatar and the Muslim Brotherhood Party. We have to acknowledge that each... Yes, talk.
Yeah, Qatar is where Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi is, and he's the spiritual leader of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yes. But I think Donald Trump sooner or later will take such a decision, such action to make them as a terrorist organization. And with time, also I think with time, Donald J. Trump will move the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. That's his second move in the Middle East. It's his two policies in the Middle East. Move the American Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. That's firstly. And secondly, to make Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. And we can't forget that Saudi Arabia paid United States of America more than $450 billion as an arms deals, but also it's a policy of the Donald Trump to refresh the American economy by taking their own money, and that's what I do like him.
Well, there's a whole lot of stuff going on, and it's great to have people like you who are in other countries in the East and able to give your perspectives on what is happening. Now, from where you are, you're seeing a lot of these refugees who are moving west. You are keeping an eye on Western news coming out of the United States, and of course, you know about Canada and them passing M103, which was basically the first step to, bringing Canada under this.
Yes.
Yeah, to Islamize it, and to outlaw or to make Islamophobia, quote unquote, punishable. And what do you see as the future of the West? Do you think this threat of ISIS to the West, let me start with ISIS. Do you think that the threat of ISIS to the West could be stopped?
Firstly, in Iraq, basically like cities like Mosul, which was the homeland of ISIS in Iraq, liberated by the Iraqi forces and American forces. They have no ISIS there, but the problem we have still ISIS in Syria, and the problem of the sleeping cells in Europe from the refugees that support ISIS. Many ISIS supporters, many ISIS members disguise it as refugees to Europe and the West, and that's a problem. So I think that Europe and the West have to establish a more vetting, secure system, so they don't allow each one go in.
Having a little problem with your audio there, Rami. Hopefully we get you back here, and if I hear you talking again, I'll know that that's the case. The thing is that, and I understand what you're saying, and I think a lot of people are concerned about that too, saying that, you know, this vetting isn't up to par on what it should be. But, and that's why I kind of asked that question earlier about this, is, you know, even if you have really, really good vetting in place, people are still going to try to come up with ways to get around it or to get through anyway, whether it is taqiyya or any other, you know, Islamic doctrine, but even just, hey, this is some, you know, regardless of what religion you follow, hey, this is a good way to get past the system. You know, that's still possible to be there. Whereas the green zone thing that I was talking about, having a green zone, a safe zone somewhere in the Middle East, regardless of what country it is, if ISIS is moving this way, okay, people need to move out, so they're going this way, okay, well, you know, where can they have a green zone to where they can say for sure ISIS is not around here? If they come, well, then we'll take care of it. But this is a safe place for people in the Middle East, because then they're not having to go through any vetting process. They're not having to go by boat or by plane anywhere. They're able to just be, you know, taken to this safe area until either one country or a number of countries work together to defeat ISIS. Then once that is done, those people can move from their safe zone, which again is patrolled or kept secure by U.S. military or again whoever, but they can then go from that safe zone back to the country where they came from, and this keeps the whole refugee crisis, quote unquote, out of the equation, as far as them having to leave their entire country or continent at least. And it even takes the whole thing of the vetting process out of the equation, because then we can just go back to that vetting for immigrants, which has happened for many, many years, which is designated differently than refugee, where they get all kinds of free stuff right from the get-go. And we actually only have about 8 minutes left in the show, but this is something that, again, people need to be aware of, is that, you know, it's great to have people like Rami who are able to give us information from these different countries, and it's great for us ourselves to be looking to the Middle East, to looking to different news sources. Don't just look to one news source to get all of your news. A great news source, by the way, is Islam in the News, which is right here every single Friday from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. But we want to look to different news sources and look to different countries and what news they are putting out about what's happening. And most importantly, you know, keep an eye on what's happening with the jihadist groups. Be praying for the people who are being persecuted, you know, the Christians who are being persecuted, the Yazidis and these different groups. But also, too, be aware of what is happening in your hometown. Be aware of what's happening in your country as a whole. Because, like we had said earlier, these jihadi groups who are blatantly out there fighting are a lot of times a distraction to what's happening behind the scenes. Because the jihadists will distract you, they'll distract your local news sources, they'll distract your government leaders from the groups who are working behind the scenes, who live peacefully but have the same worldview, the same end goal as the jihadists. And they are willing to work with democracy. They're willing to work with man-made laws and not just declaring it bid'ah or innovation or a form of shirk. But they're actually working just as hard, if not harder, than the jihadists to bring about this slow creeping Sharia, the slow Islamization by stealth in their areas. But I think we have Rami back. So Rami, let's get back to your answer to that last question.
So what was exactly the question?
If you didn't hear it, we were talking about the vetting process and how,
yes,
people want a reformation of the vetting process. But what would be better, to have a reformation of the vetting process, or to actually have a green zone, safe zone somewhere in the Middle East, to where no refugee vetting process has to even be done, and then to where they don't even have to leave the continent that they are from?
The safe zones are already established in Syria, and many Syrian refugees are going back to their homes. That's first. Secondly, but we need to establish also more vetting secure systems to those who enter Europe, enter the West, from because many of them are disguised as maybe immigrants or visitors or tourists, but they may commit terrorist attacks because ISIS will want to revenge. ISIS lost in Iraq and losing in Syria, and they want to revenge by making terrorist attacks. That's a thing. Another thing, I do support the Muslim ban from 7 Muslim countries like Syria, Libya, Iraq, and other countries, because they have a problem with the background checking by authorities. So I say I do support the ban. We need to establish a more secure vetting system, and to establish those free zones so the refugees go back to their homes. And I think many refugees want to go to their homes.
Okay, and we only have a couple minutes left in the show. What would you say needs to happen, other than the vetting process and making sure that gets better, gets reformed or whatever? What do you think the West needs to do to stop the Islamization in general?
I say we need to de-Islamize Europe. We need to de-Islamize the West. We need to ban, for example, Quran and designate it as a terrorist document like Mein Kampf, because of the hate and violent verses and racism in the book. Shut down mosques, since they are places that breed terrorists. Enough of mass immigration, and watch and review each person that enters the Western European countries and any country. So in general, I call to the Islamization process. That's what I can say. To ban Quran, design it as a terrorist document, shut down mosques, and review each person, and stop enough of mass immigration, because it's a cultural suicide for many of those countries, for many of those great cultures. They are destroying it with mass immigration.
Okay. Now, a thought that I have when you say all of that is, here in the United States, where you have the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the law that outlaws, or the law that makes Islam, quote unquote, illegal today, could make Christianity illegal tomorrow. So
it's not about a religion or faith. I do support the freedom of religion, but I don't support the hate ideologies. I don't support hate ideology, because Islam is more like an ideology, a totalitarian ideology that wants to occupy the world. I don't have a problem with a Muslim who worships, for example, whatever God, whatever prophet. But I don't support the hate in the Quran, the violent verses, the hate verses. So why basically, for example, Germany or many countries made Mein Kampf an illegal book because of the hate, because of the terror, and same goes with Quran. They can remove some hate verses, some violent verses, and they can enjoy their religion. I don't care actually if a person, an atheist or a Muslim or a Christian, I'm by myself as a Christian convert, and I had been an atheist also before. I went to Buddhist temples. I have a lot of experience with a religion,
Okay.
so I don't
Well,
have a
Rami,
problem with a
I
religion.
think a good combo of things to do would be to do kind of what we've been talking about on this show, is let all people know that Islam is not just a religion, it's a religio-political system. And if you want to freely practice the religious aspect of it, and that's it, and you fully support the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the documents of your country, and you're going to obey all country laws, that's one thing. But as soon as you let the political aspect come into it, if you want your country to be under Sharia, well, then that is a problem, because that is not compatible with those founding documents of America or with these other countries as well. So the first thing we need to do is get people educated about the religious aspect and the political aspect of the religio-political system of Islam, and let them know that the overall goal, especially of the political aspect, is the Sharia, and having that be implemented throughout the world, not just whatever country you happen to live in. And of course, at the same time, the ultimate solution, I think, here is the gospel, getting the gospel to Muslims, because when they hear the gospel, they hear that Jesus Christ died for them, that he rose from the dead 3 days later, that he is the only way to the Father. He's the only way to truly be reconciled to God, is through repentance and faith in him. Rami, you know that when a person repents of their sin and puts their trust in the Lord Jesus Christ, they are regenerated by the Holy Spirit. They have a regenerated mind, and guess what? A Islamic worldview, and then repent and put your trust in Christ, and that being renewed, that Islamic worldview is then gone, and there is no longer a desire to have the world under Sharia. There's no longer a desire to be following Muhammad, thinking that he's the perfect man and the perfect Muslim. So ultimately, the gospel is the ultimate solution here, I think.
Yes, I do support. I do like this solution, but I think in general it's about conserving the freedom and democracy and Judeo-Christian values. And if they want to accept the gospel, accept the Jesus Christ as a savior, Son of God and in His flesh, and Son of God and God also, and rose from death, and He will back. I do like this idea also.
Yes, and that's why, Rami, as you know, this is a multifaceted issue. We have so many different ways that we could talk about it. Of course, the gospel being the ultimate solution. But hey, if there's a mosque on every single corner, well, if those mosques are empty because every Muslim has repented and put their trust in Christ, well, then we just have a lot of empty buildings around. And that's not nearly as bad.
Yes, it's actually a good idea. It's a good idea. I do like it. Yeah.
Right. So, Rami, I thank you so much for your time and for all the information that you've given to me and to our audience. And to our audience, if you are not a Muslim, please take everything that we said to heart. And please, Christians, be sharing the gospel with the Muslims around you, even though they have an ideology, a worldview that you hate, because it stems right back to this false religion. I can understand that, but remember,
the fact is, many Muslims came to me to help them to convert to Christianity. But the thing is, I don't want to be naive. I want someone with a true one who wants exactly to convert. I can't help anyone from Jordan, but only in Jordan. I do know people in Jordan. I don't know anyone outside Jordan.
That's okay, Rami. I pray for you, and I hope the Lord uses you where you are. That's the thing. Jordan is your mission field, and the United States is my mission field. And that's why the Bible tells us, that God knows where we are located. He knew from all eternity where each person would be and where they would be working for the Lord. So let's just be doing that where we are and be reaching Muslims around us, be reaching other non-Christians around us. And Rami, again, thank you so much for being on. And to our viewers, thank you for joining us. And please join us next week for another episode. But tonight, we're coming up with Ratio Christi's Truth Matters, which will be here live on the Trinity channel. And of course, every Friday is Islam and the News, giving you 1 hour of news stories and videos and all that stuff that you will not here in the mainstream media. So please tune in for all of our weekly shows. Please pray for us, and please continue to support ABN and the Trinity channel, which will get these shows out to the world continually through all the different satellite signals that we have, as well as all our different smartphone devices and apps and all that other kind of stuff. So please check out all that stuff, and we will see you next time right here on ABN's Trinity channel.